Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We now invite the Jamaica Combined Cadet Force to lead us in the opening of this ceremony as they march in the parade of flags of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union's member countries and territories. After the parade of flags, we ask that you remain standing for the national anthem of Jamaica.
we perish. Knowledge send us, Heavenly Father, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever, Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love.
You may be seated. Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, Mr. Gary Allen, President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Mr. Paul Thompson, President of the Public Media Alliance, Ms. Natalie Neter, representing the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Dr. Peter Phillips, Ms. Sally Ann Wilson, CEO PMA, Ms. Sonia Gill, CBU Secretary General, members of the boards of the CBU and PMA, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the academic community, members of the media fraternity, members of the local organizing committee, sponsors, partners, conference delegates, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the opening ceremony for the Caribbean Broadcasting Union's 59th Annual General Assembly, an event being held in association with the Global Conference of the Public Media Alliance. For those who have traveled from overseas, we welcome you to Jamaica and hope that you enjoy your time with us on the island. We also welcome our viewers as this event is being carried live on the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica's PBCJ's cable channel and is also being streamed live on their Facebook page. I am Livingston White and I will be chairing this evening's opening ceremony. The Caribbean Broadcasting Union was established in November 1970 and is a grouping of 40 media entities located in 21 countries and territories in the Dutch, English, French, and Spanish-speaking Caribbean. A part of the CBU's mandate is to build the capacity of media institutions in the region, and so this year's annual General Assembly's theme is Building Resilience to Climate Change, Business, Technology, and Content Options for the Caribbean Media. To help us understand the link between climate change and Caribbean media, please help me welcome President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Mr. Gary Allen, to deliver his address.
Thank you very much, Chairman White. Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica. Opposition Spokesperson on Information, Natalie Neter Headley, representing the Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips. President Paul Thompson of the Public Media Alliance and CEO of Radio New Zealand. Members of the Diplomatic Corps. Members of the boards of PMA and the CBU, chairman and deputy chairman, directors of the boards of the RGR Gleaner Communications Group, media colleagues, friends, partners, sponsors, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to address you in my home country of Jamaica as president of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. Indeed, I believe very few CBU presidents have had the pleasure of holding office and also hosting a General Assembly at home. It is my further pleasure to welcome all those who have come, and especially the directors of the Public Media Alliance, in which I am privileged to be Vice President. So that makes it a double honor. I am able to welcome you as Vice President of the PMA and President of the CBU to a CBU General Assembly being held in my home country. That's a special moment for me. Our conference activities started earlier today with the PMA conference using the theme Speak Out, Rebuilding Trust in Media and Democracy. We had a tremendous session throughout today, and I think that the PMA team should be congratulated for a job well done, especially on issues to do with public media. I believe we must now search the archives to see if a sitting president of the CBU has ever hosted an AGA while being vice president of the PMA and also having the joint staging of a regional and an international media conference in Jamaica at the same time. We are proud to be hosting here in Jamaica, which, while it has its challenges in journalism, still ranks high on the various indices for freedom of the media. And I am also grateful to the PMA and its partners from the UK, especially the UK Guardian, for highlighting a critical issue that was quite emotional for most of us today in the conference as we looked at another important issue, the Windrush experience, and showcasing new material from the British side as well as the Caribbean side of the media about experiences of Caribbean people in this most unfortunate situation. I think, Prime Minister, you identify with that because indeed you were in London this year when that came to a climax. And I saw many interviews that you gave which actually overshone other interviews that would have originally been far more controversial had there not been the issue of Windrush to deal with. But looking at it today, it was one of those topics that was indeed fulfilling for us to discuss. Tomorrow, the CBU's assembly will take place under the theme Building Resilience to Climate Change, Business, Technology, and Content Options for Caribbean Media. That topic is dear to us because we have had experiences, none more so than last year, which focused us on the point that we too must look at the resilience that we have to build in ourselves, our capacities in media, to tackle these vulnerabilities that we have in the region. The theme resonates in our land of wood and water, which right now has a lot of drought. And sometimes we have floods, hurricanes, and earthquakes, but such are the effects of climate change and the impact that it has been having on our countries. The CBU expresses thanks to our partners, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, 5Cs, with whom we have had some designated sessions in which we hope that we will have full participation tomorrow and we will look at these topics in greater detail. The catastrophic hurricane season of September 2017 was an unwelcomed reminder of the vulnerabilities that we have in the region. The public interest media, whom we are members of that fraternity and who make up a significant portion of the union, recognized and shouldered responsibility for providing life-saving information to mitigate against those persons who had little or no formal information sources last year in their time of greatest need. Little attention has been paid to the media's own vulnerability, and so, as I said before, we will be adding some of the risks of climate change to media and how we should prepare for them in our deliberations. And as we believe that we will convince others tomorrow in the sessions to recognize climate proofing is indeed possible, even if challenges do occur, and they must be a priority for our region. I submit to you that in the absence of indigenous media, which we as traditional broadcasters are, our commitment to providing public interest information would fail our societies had we not stuck to the task. We saw instances in times of adversity last year where some thought that it was social to be posting information drawn from elsewhere in the world and labeling it as what was happening in Dominica, some of it making fun of the adversity of those who were having their darkest moment. We only have to recall as well that it was the indigenous media that was the credible voice to which one prime minister had to turn in a nearby country to actually bring messages to his people and the rest of the region about what was actually happening in his homeland. That is why we in the CBU were very pleased that last year we worked with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and the British Broadcasting Corporation, represented by their head of news here at the PMA conference, in delivering broadcast equipment to those affected in Anguilla, Dominica, the Turks and Caicos Islands, helping to put traditional media, reliable media, credible media back on its feet to provide the adequate public service information required for a population to remain informed about what is happening around them. Over the past year, the challenges in our industry have affected all of us, especially those of us solely or tremendously dependent on declining broadcast and print advertising revenues. However, I must take time to note that our ongoing concern for the challenges of CariVision is one which also falls in this space. CariVision is the regional and diaspora channel operated by our partially owned subsidiary company, the Caribbean Media Corporation. The channel continues to struggle in spite of having a strong contribution to regionalism, providing strong regional content, and being one of those that is accessed in more than 30 territories in the region as well as in the diaspora. After a decade and a half of intensive efforts, it has still not been put on a viable path. It still is a drain on the resources of the CMC, meager resources though they are. And in spite of the fact that it has such a tremendous reach, reaching into North America and the diaspora, where our regional tourism markets are those that are targeted for visitors, CariVision still does not get not even the rounding errors of the tens of millions of US dollars spent on tourism to woo people from those markets to the Caribbean. Surely, if we intend to strengthen our regional institutions, including a regional public service media institution, that is what one of the things that we could consider doing to help. It is our view that together we have to strengthen our crucial institutions in the region if this process of regionalism is to work. We take note that our leaders in the Caribbean community have again recommitted themselves to a more progressive and deliberate integration movement. We remind our leaders, represented here today by the chairman of CARICOM, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, that if regionalism is to work, the glue that will hold us closer together is the glue of information, credible information. And therefore, it is hardly likely, Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, that a regional public service institution will be able to function without the political will and commitment not to give donations, but to include it as a part of those budgets that will make a difference in what it is that we do. We dare say, Prime Minister, that without a healthy, reliable, and credible media environment in the region, then the dreams of integration that we talk about are surely not going to progress at the level that we dream of. You all know that we are at this time involved in tremendous change in our industry from analog to digital terrestrial television broadcasting. Some of our members have started the process and others are struggling to start. This will certainly be one of the matters discussed again in our assembly this year. We again call on regional regulators and policymakers to collaborate with us where we can, as a region, take deliberate steps to ensure that the indigenous broadcast sector is allowed the transition in a manner that will retain their viability and one that will retain their competitiveness, one that allows them to enter the full range of media and communications services that the new broadcasting technologies will allow. Put another way, quite bluntly, what we want is to allow our indigenous broadcasters to transition to digital and be able to get into all the services of internet service provision, of cable service provision, of internet telephone services, and of wireless data provisions. If that happens, we will be on an equal footing, and with wireless services, our broader populations will be served. That's the only model that will see us being able to continue to be viable. If we are asked to cut ourselves into just a content producing model, then what will be the benefit of digital switchover to us? While that is done, we appeal to the authorities to ensure that all countries in our region take steps for the prevention of analog television waste material being dumped in our region. We are close to markets where dumping of content that they do not want can be done, and we have seen some evidence of it, where television sets are marketed as digital quality, digital-like, and they are actually not digital. To put that analog waste in our countries is something that would introduce a new environmental issue for us. If you permit me, Chairman, we must also draw attention to the concern that we have here in Jamaica, in Suriname, and in Trinidad and Tobago with draft legislation that is aimed at putting what we know are necessary laws in place for data protection. We will deliberate upon some of these issues in our conference sessions, but we must make it clear that we will not yield our editorial independence, we will not reveal our sources to any other person than our editorial chiefs, we will not accept a law that will levy fines or imprisonment on publishers for not meeting data protection laws of disclosure of our information to others. Ladies and gentlemen, we will deliberate upon those issues, and I am quite confident that at the end of the deliberations, those points that are non-negotiable will remain with us. But we are also hopeful that we will find consensus and be able to influence our leaders, because they know that the ranking we have for press freedom, and indeed, because a free press is the oxygen for democracy, we know that they will join us in doing the right thing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are indebted to our many partners for the support that they have given us in making these conferences happen, especially the Jamaica Tourist Board, the local organizing committee of the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica team, that's the PBCJ team, led by CEO Keith Campbell, the CPTC team, led by Lorna Napier, the CARIMAC team, led by our chairman, Dr. Livingston White, the Phase 3 team, led by Dr. Marcia Forbes and Delana Forbes, and the TVJ team, led by Mrs. Claire Grant. In closing, therefore, let me express a note of personal thanks and gratitude for the support that I have received over the course of my first year as president of the CBU. It has helped me through a very difficult year, and now that we are at another conference, we can say that we have covered a lot of ground in 1 year and look forward to sprinting through another. Next year, I look forward to welcoming you to San Andres Island, Colombia, where the CBU will celebrate its 50th assembly. And probably the PMA might be jealous enough to want to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. The Public Media Alliance is the largest global association of public service broadcasters. It began as the Commonwealth Broadcasting Association, CBA, in 1945. In 2014, the membership of the CBA unanimously voted for the organization to become known as the Public Media Alliance and to allow full and equal membership of public service broadcasters from any country in the world. Today, the Public Media Alliance hosted its 2018 Global Conference in Jamaica under the theme, Speak Out, Rebuilding Trust in Media and Democracy. We now invite President of the Public Media Alliance, Mr. Paul Thompson, to deliver his address.
Most Honourable Prime Minister, special guests, friends and colleagues. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Paul Thompson tēnei, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. So what I've just done then is greeted you in Te Reo, the national language of New Zealand. And what I said was greetings to you all, greetings to you all, greetings to you all. My name is Paul Thompson, and it's about the people, the people, the people. I feel really at home here in Jamaica. I come from a small democracy on the edge of the world. It's an open and tolerant society, and that openness and tolerance have been hard fought and hard won. We were settled, we were colonised, we found our independence, and now we're thoroughly going through the process of decolonisation and becoming a modern and very united nation. And making our way in an uncertain world with our sovereignty intact. And I want to come back to sovereignty soon because I think sovereignty runs through all of the comments that Gary Allen has just made so eloquently, and also it was the major theme of our conference today. A free, sustainable, effective fourth estate, however it is funded or organised, it's not a nice to have, it's not a luxury, it is absolutely fundamentally essential to the operation of our countries. I would argue that it's as important as clean air and clean water. As Mr. Allen said, credible information provided by trusted independent media is the glue of our society. It is so fantastic to be able to bring the Public Media Alliance conference to Jamaica because media freedom lives and breathes here. And it's just so appropriate that we've been able to come to this place where there is that freedom as we talk about and celebrate what we do as journalists and as media professionals. We are a tough and resilient industry. Independence is in our DNA. You can't tell us what to do. I know people try often to do that, but we are a very resilient and independent industry. But we're also under significant pressure. And that pressure, whether it's commercial pressure or the temptation to try to limit the freedom of the media, that pressure has been unrelenting. And we'll get through that, and as an industry, we'll find solutions to those problems, and we will keep going because if we are as essential as clean air and water, we will endure and we will survive. But we do need the support of the community, we do need the support of audiences, and we do need the support of politicians to make sure that continues. And my final point tonight is don't assume that we'll be there when you need us as an automatic right. We'll certainly do our best, and I think we will be. But today at the conference, we talked about the hurricanes, Hurricane Irma, and Mr. Allen has referred to those as well. Those are the moments when you really find whether you've got an independent media that can operate freely and do its job. But if I can just share a little bit of a story of the most testing moment for me in the job was in 2016 when New Zealand had its third major earthquake in 5 years, which seriously affected the city in which I live. And I was in bed and I thought my wife was shaking me, then I thought she was shaking the bed, then I thought she was shaking the house. And it was 7.8 on the Richter scale, about 400 kilometres away. But we were that close Radio New Zealand, the public broadcaster, was that close to going off air that night. And it really was luck and good planning and gutsy, terrific staff that kept us going. We were the only live broadcaster providing that critical information as a lifeline at that time. And it really has made us do some soul searching, and we've strengthened our resilience since then. But that is just an example of making sure that none of us assume we will be there at those critical moments, whether that's civil strife or political strife or discord or significant civil emergency. So look, I'll leave you with that thought. I do want to thank all of you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My sincere thanks to the Caribbean Broadcasting Union for hosting us. And I'll end with the thought that I began with, which is what we do as journalists. It's not about us. It's not about the politicians. It's not about the bureaucrats. It's not about the shareholders even. It is about the people. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. This evening's cultural item will be performed by the Jamaican Folk Singers, an ensemble dedicated to traditional Jamaican songs. The group was founded in 1967 and just celebrated its 50th anniversary. They have released several albums, including Pepper Pot in 2006, and perform an annual season of concerts. Tonight, they perform a folk medley. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the Jamaican Folk Singers.
This long time, girl, me never see you. Come make me hold your hand. This long time, girl, me never see you. Come make me hold your hand. Big head jump, roll, sit down, the tree top, pick off the blossom. Make me hold your hand, girl. Make me hold your hand.
This long time, girl, me never see you. Come make me walk and talk. This long time, girl, me never see you. Come make me walk and talk.
Big head jump, roll, sit down, the tree top, pick off the blossom.
Make me hold your hand, girl. Make me hold your hand.
This long time, girl, me never see you. Come make we wheel and turn. This long time, girl, me never see you. Come make we wheel and turn. Big head jump, cross, sit down, the tree top, pick off the blossom.
Make me hold your hand, girl. Make me hold your hand. Make me wheel and turn till we tumble down. Make me hold your hand, girl. Make me wheel and turn till we tumble down. Make me hold your hand, girl.
Me not drink a coffee, tea, mango time. Care how nice it may be, mango time. At the height of the mango crop, when the fruit them are ripe and drop, wash your pot, turn them down, mango time. Make we go mango walk, mango time. For Moonshine tonight, come make we dance and sing. Moonshine tonight, come make we dance and sing. Me dey rock so, you dey rock so on a banyan tree. Me dey rock so, you dey rock so on a banyan tree. Ladies make curtsy, gentlemen make bow. Ladies make curtsy, gentlemen make bow. Me dey rock so, you dey rock so on a banyan tree. Me dey rock so, you dey rock so on a banyan tree. La la la, la la la, la 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 la, la la la, la la la, la 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 la. Then we join hands and dance around and round. Then we join hands and dance around and round. Me dey rock so, you dey rock so on a banyan tree. Me dey rock so, you dey rock so on a banyan tree. La la la, la la la, la 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 la, la la la, la la la, la 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 la.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for the Jamaican folk singers. To introduce our keynote speaker for this evening's opening ceremony, I now invite Caribbean Broadcasting Union's Vice President and Chief Executive Officer of Great Belize Productions, Miss Amalia Mai.
Good evening, everyone. Prime Minister, distinguished guests, friends, colleagues, and the families at the Caribbean Broadcasting Union and the Public Media Alliance. We are pleased to welcome the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, who is steadfastly focused on building partnerships to achieve the vision of shared prosperity for all Jamaicans through inclusive economic growth and meaningful job creation. Leading an agile and responsive government, the Prime Minister is committed to making Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, do business, and then retire in paradise. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister needs no further introduction, so I invite him to the podium to address this General Assembly.
Thank you so much, Amelia. I have not had an opportunity to visit Belize, but I'm going to make sure I do. Mr. Gary Allen, President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Ms. Natalie Nita Headley, representing the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Paul Thompson, President of the Public Media Alliance, Chairman and other representatives of visiting and local media agencies, representatives of academia, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just make some general comments. It is the first that I'm addressing an audience with so many telephones and iPads and other tablets pointed at me. But then again, I'm addressing the media, which takes me into my fourth point in my key points that I'm going to make to you today. Mr. Thompson, you said that the press is a public utility like water or electricity. Our press association says it is the oxygen of our democracy. And I absolutely agree with you. In today's world of social media, fake news, and I hear that that's a bad word. I'm not accusing the press. Alternative facts. We need the free press more than ever. In fact, the only way to counter the social media, which is providing false information, providing unverified information, changing the public mood in democracies, influenced by all kinds of political, geostrategic objectives, is to have the free press strengthened and strong in its ability to ferret out the truth. And I want to reinforce that point, because today, everyone, by virtue of social media, claims to be a journalist. Everyone can post their own story. But that is not the real challenge. The challenge is that now, with technology, which is part of the thing that the topics that you have discussed, is that now you have artificial intelligence. Now you have the ability for persons to sit in a room, create fake identities, and rapidly spread false information to unsuspecting consumers. There is no filter. There is no fact check. There is no editor. There is no consideration of the public good. So, as it has turned out, and I have come to understand, that the best protection from the dangers of social media is to have a free press that is strong in ferreting out the truth. So, as I stand here addressing you as a politician, obviously, I do have concerns about the press, but I will never share them. But I have even greater concern about the evolving social media. And in a country where media literacy is not as high as it should be, I have even greater concern. And therefore, I depend, literally, on our press to ensure that whatever false information is spread in social media, that they, at some point in time, will use their editorial abilities, their research abilities, to correct false narrative that is spread in social media. So we're very happy with our press in that regard. And I must say that I'm very proud as well to read that Jamaica is ranked 6th in the world in terms of the freedom of its press. And that is something that all Jamaicans should feel very proud of. I'm certain that President Allen would not disagree with me. And I see the chairman of one of our major newspapers here. I had to look at him twice to recognize him because he's in disguise. and he would not disagree with me either, to say that by and large, it has been a collective effort in ensuring the freedom of our press. And let me tell you how the collective effort works. The press would hound the politicians, pressure them. At every meeting they would say, what are you doing about taking out criminal liability? What are you doing about reforming the Defamation Act? And we as politicians would go back and we would contemplate, and then we'd always come to the decision. You cannot beat the press, and therefore let us work together with the press. And so as a result of that attitude, on both sides we have two major political parties. You would have seen significant legislation passed. I've just mentioned, for example, the total reform of the Defamation Act, taking out criminal libel. But you would have also seen the passage of legislation for freedom for access to information. You would have seen passage of the whistleblower legislation. And now we are at a point where we are in our parliament discussing the Data Protection Act. Now, President, you've mentioned that you have some concerns with the act. So just remember the internal process of coming to an understanding. It is now being debated. I take careful note of your concerns. I will go back to my cabinet, to my parliamentary colleagues. I see Ms. Headley is here as well. Are you a member of the committee? No, but I'm certain you're going to take back to your side the concerns raised. We're at a critical intersection. The Data Protection Bill comes on the heel of Jamaica putting in place a national identification system. And a part of the call surrounding the national identification system is the protection of data. So there are two forces at play. One is the privacy of data for the public and the security of that data, which enhances the privacy. And the other is access to data, access to information. The parliament, filled with politicians, sit at the intersection of these two competing perspectives. But I believe that we will find the right solution. Certainly, we would not want to create a moral hazard for the press in creating any criminal liability as it would relate to the protections you already have in terms of your ability to investigate without criminal liable. So, I think a solution can be found, and cooperatively, we will come up with what works best for Jamaica and maintain our highly placed rank of 6th in the world in terms of access, freedom of the press and access to information. But I want to also make another key point, and that is more than ever, we will need not just a free press and not just a reliable press in the sense of giving accurate information, but we will need to have a press with reliable uptime. Because when we start to think of issues such as climate change, the only way we're going to know what is coming and what is happening is if our press is reliably up and running. It may mean that there will have to be some conversation about building redundancy and resilience into your infrastructure and your network. Government is not opposed to having that kind of conversation, and that indeed would be part of the public good in ensuring that small island nations like ours within the Caribbean basin can act as redundancy for each other. That if something were to go wrong with the transmission facilities in Haiti, for example, that Jamaica should be able to assist. or vice versa. And as I said, as a matter of public good, the government would not be opposed to having that kind of conversation about ensuring the resilience and having certain redundancies built into your infrastructure. The last key point that I want to raise is that with a free press and access to information comes great responsibilities. Jamaica, whilst ranking very highly in the freedom of its press, we face a significant challenge with crime and violence. The government recently adopted several measures that have been effectively addressing the crime issue. The real challenge remains, and that is the use of violence. Violence is at an epidemic proportion. And that is mostly, from my perspective, a social issue. It has cultural roots. But the only way to effectively deal with that is through our media. And there is, I'm sure, significant concerns raised about being able to adequately address the broadcast, publishing, promotion, projection of material and content that promotes violence. It is not a topic that I intend to debate along the lines of censorship, because the truth is, in our local Caribbean experience, that doesn't work. What happens is you develop a black market for the content, effectively, that you can't police, you can't regulate, and it probably gets out of hand even worse. But what we have to do is to ensure that we, as concerned citizens, have a strong voice saying what we believe is, from a contextual point of view, the correct thing. So, there's no challenge putting out content that may have violent overtones. But it can't be just left without some kind of editorial note to say, this is not good for our society, or this is not the behavior that we promote. So, effectively, Mr. President, what I'm saying is that, yes, you are a free press, and yes, you can put out whatever content you choose to, but there is always the concern for the public good. What do you stand for as media? What are the standards that you maintain in your media house? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with you putting out, promoting, and projecting the high standards that you maintain, so that the public has balance and has enough information to place what they are bombarded with every day in a context. Government has a role to play in that. The government has to increase its footprint and presence in ensuring that there are positive messages in a free media, which is not just free in its ability to publish, but it is privately owned. The profit issue is significant. How do you remain viable if you are only putting out PSAs? That is a big issue, obviously. So there has to now, in my opinion, Mr. President, and speaking to the members of the media here, there has to be a kind of sit-down now to figure out how it is that we're going to get our positive messages out there whilst ensuring that your media houses and your publishing houses remain viable. I know there are many models. We have had discussions about how advertising can be addressed. I'm not going to go into that issue now, but we'll have that discussion further on. But the government has now reached a point where it recognizes that violence is an epidemic in Jamaica. And we are about to launch a commission on how to treat with this epidemic of violence. And I'm certain that a major stakeholder in this will be the media and how the media promotes, projects, produces, and publicizes content that could in any way support violence. It is not a discussion for politicians solely to have. It is a national discussion, and when I announce this commission, I'm certain that we will be inviting members of the Press Association and the Media Association to participate, to help us to come to a Jamaican solution to this issue of violence. So those were my key points. I hope they were well made and well received. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations on your 49th Assembly, and keep the press free and strong.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Tonight's opening ceremony would not have been possible without the generous support of various individuals and organizations. To move the vote of thanks, please welcome Chief Executive Officer of the Public Media Alliance, Sally Ann Wilson.
Mr. Honourable Prime Minister, distinguished guests, friends and colleagues, thank you. I was in a bit of a flap this evening as I came down in the elevator because I suddenly realised that I'd left my jacket upstairs. But I know when I'm in a country where there's media I can trust. And before I rushed all the way back up again, I thought, hang on a minute, I read the Sunday Gleaner. And the Sunday Gleaner yesterday, on its front page, had a story about the fact that, Prime Minister, you've now permitted ladies to enter government buildings with bare shoulders. My panic was over. Thank you for allowing ladies to be more comfortable, but thank you more seriously for your support for media freedom. The Public Media Alliance works globally, and a big part of our decision to come to Jamaica, which is a very small country, is that it ranks so highly in a world where media freedom is being continually and alarmingly eroded. It is absolutely critical for democracy, and we thank you for your warmth, for your hospitality, for allowing us to have the discussions around innovation in public media that we've shared today, for allowing us to share very poignant discussion of how the media is tackling the Windrush scandal, which I know when you were in the UK, you were a part of bringing to the media's attention and all that unraveled there. We know there's more of that story to come, but thank you, and thank you. It is an absolute pleasure to have spent some time with all my colleagues and friends in Jamaica. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we leave the room, we ask the board members of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union and the Public Media Alliance, along with our government officials, to gather at the podium for the event's official photograph. While the photo session occurs, we invite the rest of our guests to tour our booths in the foyer, and after viewing the displays, we invite you to join us for a cocktail reception. During the reception, we will be entertained by Jamaica's premier steel band, the Panoridym Steel Orchestra. Do enjoy the rest of the evening and all the best for a successful 49th Annual General Assembly.